Have you ever noticed the link between the seven seals, trumpets, and bowls in Revelation and that Pharaoh's dream back in the time of Joseph? Now, the book of Revelation is quite obviously one of the most mysterious books in the Bible, if not the most mysterious book. But I believe that it's possible for the likes of myself and you collectively as a group around the world to piece it all together and actually make some sense of it. So about 4 or 5 years ago, after weeks of fasting, praying, reading the book of Revelation like I don't know how many times, I was woken up one night, right in the middle of the night, about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was given a word of knowledge by some sort of voice which was far superior to my own, far more knowledgeable and authoritative, and well, I'm quite sure you know what I'm talking about. It obviously wasn't from me, okay? And it just told me that story back in the time of Joseph, with the Pharaoh with his dreams of the 7 cows and the 7 unhealthy diseased cows, followed by the 7 really good fruitful like ears of wheat or barley, was then followed by the 7 diseased, horrible looking blues. I'm quite sure you must know the dream that I'm talking about, and also the interpretation of that dream. That dream was that there was going to be 7 really good fruitful years in the kingdom, followed by 7 years of famine and hardship. It was not the case that this was a linear sequence, i.e. there were 7 good years followed by 7 bad, and then yet another 7 good years and 7 bad years. Rather, these 2 dreams, both of the cows and these ears of wheat, were actually saying the same thing. So what this meant was that the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets and the 7 bowls are not linear events. It is not the case that the 7 seals are opened and then the 7 trumpets are blown and then the 7 bowls, but rather the first seal is broken, followed by the trumpet blast to sound that the seal has been broken, and then the bowl of wrath poured out. And then the second seal is broken, the trumpet blast is blown, and the second bowl is poured out, followed by the third and the fourth, and so forth. So I was then told to write it all out, which I complained because, it was the middle of the night, I wanted to go back to bed, but this voice was very persistent, and, it said, look, you're going to forget this in the morning, so I said, okay, fair enough. So I got the laptop opened up BibleGateway.com, and basically copied and pasted all of these scripts into an Excel spreadsheet. So they were in 7 columns. Give it a quick read through and thought this is a pile of old cobblers, and forgot about it, went back to sleep. And in the morning I read through and I realised that actually, this makes an awful lot of sense. There is a lot of similarity between these. So let's take a look on the laptop here and just see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. Okay, so here is the Excel spreadsheet that I made up all those years ago. Over here we can see we have the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. So now I'm going to be straight up with you, perfectly honest. The first one, the first of the seals, trumpets, and that does not really make all that much sense. So, as I'm sure you know, the first is the white horse with the bow and the crown and goes off and is victorious. One thing also I'll say is the seals appears to be, from my my interpretation, a sort of more spiritual view of what's going on, whereas the trumpet seems to be the what is going to happen when the bowl is poured out, and the third is the what has happened, the consequences of the seal and the trumpet. Now, let's have a quick look. So, as I say, the first one is the white horse with the bow. It says that hell and fire mixed with blood is going to be rained down and burn up a third of the earth. And on the bowls, it says something about the mark of the beast. So, the first angel poured out the bowl on the earth, and a nasty and terrible sore appeared on the people who had the beast's mark and worshipped its image. So, one interpretation of this could well be that this time period could be the white horse was Constantine going out to be victorious on the whole Roman the Roman Catholic Church, etc. And those that had the beast image would be the Roman Catholic Church, and of course you had the bubonic plague back in those days. I'm not saying it is. That's just something through history that, you know, these terrible sores which appeared on the people and killed the people through the third of the earth. The third of the earth was affected by the bubonic plague in them days. That is a possibility. That's something we have in history. Maybe, maybe not. I'm just really, just really putting some ideas out there. But really, don't take my word for it. Number 2 is a lot more interesting. So in number 2 we have the fiery red horse come to take peace from the earth with the large sword. What we have in the trumpets, when the trumpet is blasted, is a huge mountain burning with fire thrown down into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the creatures living in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Now, a huge mountain burning with fire is quite obviously known to you and me as a volcano. And I was watching a documentary a few months ago where they were saying back in the ancient times a huge volcano had fallen into the sea around Greece somewhere, I think, and it sent a massive, humongous tidal wave, a bit like the tsunami that they had a few years ago, but only on a much, much, much bigger scale, and it completely annihilated all of the ancient towns and cities. On the coast from like Israel all the way northern Africa, it was all completely destroyed at that time. And as we get down into the second bowl, you see that, yet again, the second angel pulled its bowl out into the sea. And the sea turned blood, like the blood of a corpse, and every living thing in the sea died. So, the second, as we see, about the sea, turning to blood, things in the sea dying. The second trumpet, again, is a third of the sea, it becomes blood, things die. Bit of a coincidence. Maybe, maybe not. So moving on to the third, we have the black horse and its rider weighing scales in his right hand. Sound like voice, blah 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 blah. Yeah, this is the wheat and the barley, and do not damage the olive oil or the wine. Okay, so yet again, something I noticed there back in the old days was when you had, I can't remember the name of the disease, but it's some sort of waterborne disease. I know we had it in London, and the only people that survived this disease was the drunks. You know, one of the doctors noticed that all the drunks were coming and going from the pub. They were perfectly fine, but everybody else in London was sick and dying of this thing. And that's where they realised that, you know, it was being spread through the water system, and all the wells were blocked up and whatnot. So, with the barley and the wheat, possibly something will happen to the water, which will affect the produce and the crops. But things like olive oil and wine will not be affected. So if you're a drunk that eats a lot of olive oil, maybe like Italians, then they'll be just fine. Who knows? So, does the trumpets or the bowls correspond in some way with something like that? What we have is a great star, burning like a torch, fell from heaven. It fell on a third of the rivers and the springs of water. The star's name is Wormwood, and a third of the waters become wormwood. And many people died from the water because it became so bitter. Now, as I was saying, it's a little bit similar, bit of a consequence. The third bowl was poured out, and the rivers and springs of water, they turned into blood. This is rather the same, wouldn't you agree? Now, let's move on to number 4, shall we? And we see the pale green horse, and its name, rider's name was Death, and the grey followed right behind him. They were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, disease, and the wild beasts of the earth. Now, I think if this event's just happened with the water, then it's quite possible that famine and disease would then be following. And from that, maybe the wild beasts of the earth, also being a bit famished, might start coming into towns and cities to feed on humans. Possible. Now, so, the trumpet, I believe this is the fourth, right? Yeah, the fourth trumpet, says that a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them became dark, and the day lost its light, and the night lost a third of the light too. And this is where it gets a bit weird, because in the bowl, it says that the fourth angel poured its bowl out on the sun, so that's similar. However, rather than losing its light, it says that it allowed the sun to burn people with fire, and the people were burned by the intensity, and they cursed the name of God, and blah blah blah. So that one's a bit iffy. Yes, they do match. They are both about the sun, but one says that the sun's losing its light, and the other says that it's burning people with fire. So I guess when that happens, you're going to know what it is. Okay, so let's move on to seal number 5, and what we have here is, again, a more heavenly perspective of what's going on. So this is the guys up in heaven saying that, how long is it going to be? And he's like, yeah, just wait a bit more. Okay. And the trumpet is blown. And when the trumpet blows, I saw a star that had fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. He opened the shaft of the abyss, and smoke rose up from the shaft like smoke from a huge furnace. The sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the shaft. Then locusts came forth from the smoke and onto the earth. They were given power like that of scorpions have on the earth. They were told not to hurt the grass of the earth or any green plant or any tree. They could only hurt people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. The locusts weren't allowed to kill them, but only to make them suffer for 5 months. Now, a very important point here is that they're not allowed to hurt the people, not that do not have the mark of the beast, but the people that have the seal of God on their foreheads. So you see that possibly the mark of the beast, which is on the forehead or the right hand, is also rather similar to the seal of God, which is on your forehead, which, if you look back in the Old Testament, Moses makes mention of this exact same seal on the forehead being the seal of God and what that is, and whether or not that has anything to do with the understanding of what the mark of the beast is on the forehead being the opposite of the mark of God on the forehead. I don't know. I don't know for definite, but it certainly seems a possibility. And, if you want to comment on that, that'd be great. So, basically, the sun's been darkened, locusts have come out to come and hurt people for 5 months. Next is the bowls. Let's see if the bowls sounds eerily similar. The fifth angel poured the bowl over the beast's throne, and darkness covered its kingdom. People bit their tongues because of their pain, and they cursed God of heaven because of their pains and sores, but they did not turn away from what they had done. So, the people are agonizing in pain with sores, and they're not allowed to die, but they just suffer for 5 months because they're getting bit by these locusts. I mean, it would make sense. Rather than it just being dark, because when you turn the lights off, you're not agonizing in pain. But clearly, if it's dark because the sun's been darkened by the smoke coming from the shafts and the locusts biting you, making you in considerable pain. Anyway, let's move on to number 6. What we have here is there is a great earthquake. The sun becomes black as funeral clothing, and the entire moon turned red as blood. The stars of the sky fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its fruit when shaken by a strong wind. Now, just talking about that, the stars fall into the earth, does that mean literal stars like comets, or like in the Old Testament back in, I think it's probably likely Genesis, it mentions the stars fall into the earth as the fallen angels? Could be. Anyway, let's continue. The sky disappeared like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island moved from its place. Then the kings of the earth, the officials, the generals, the rich and the powerful, and everyone slave and free, hid themselves in caves and in rocks of the mountains. They called on the mountains and the rocks, "Fall on us, hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the Lamb's wrath. The great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" So here's a very good point on that, is that these guys are worried that the time of the Lamb is coming and that judgment is upon us. If this was linear, and this is the seals followed by the trumpets and then followed by the bowls, then they'd have a long wait until they eventually get to the end of the bowls, right? This is why I believe that this is actually, on the sixth seal, this is Jesus coming back to land on the Mount of Olives. This is what's going on right here. And the stars falling, whether that's the angels coming down, whether that's the, Jesus coming back with the bride of Christ, all of the dudes from heaven all coming back at once. And then the rest of the guys, those that sealed with the mark of God on their foreheads, being raised up at that time and coming to meet him in the skies and go off to Jerusalem and whatnot. Maybe this is that time. So, as we go down to the trumpet, let's see what happens. This is an interesting one. It says that he heard a voice from the four horns on the gold altar and said that the sixth angel who had the trumpet released the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates. Then the four angels who had been made ready for that very hour, day, month and year were released to kill a third of humankind. The number of cavalry troops was 200 million. You see, this sounds a lot like Armageddon, right? Which is why I say, this is Jesus come back down, and they've all gone to kill him. This is the Battle of Armageddon, and those four angels have been released to slay 200 million cavalry troops, right? These aren't innocent civilians walking around town. This is cavalry troops. And then it goes on to describe their breastplates and blah, 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 smoke coming from the tails and all the rest of it. And you've probably heard a lot of people saying that the description mentioned here sounds a lot like modern day tanks and artillery, which, you'd have to agree with. So let's just fast forward on to the sixth bowl and see if there's any similarities between the bowls and the trumpets. And there absolutely is, as you can see. It says that the sixth bowl is poured out on the great river Euphrates. Is that not the exact same thing which we've heard in the trumpets? So it says that great river Euphrates, the water dried up to make way for the kings from the east. Now, is this the great army coming down, marching down for the Battle of Armageddon? Okay, so then it goes on to say about the kings from the east and the three unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the dragon's mouth and whatnot. And and then it says that these are the demonic spirits that do signs and wonders. They go out to all the kings of the whole world to gather them for battle on the great day of God the Almighty. This is the Battle of Armageddon. The Battle of Armageddon happens, as I said, when Jesus comes back, right? This is it. This is why in the seal you said that they were all hiding in fear because they know that he's come back, and now this is them marching down to do the Battle of Armageddon. And what does it say? It says, "Look, I'm coming like a thief. Favoured are those who stay awake and close so that they do not go around naked and exposed to shame." He comes like a thief. What did he say? He'll come like a thief in the night. This is that time. And then, putting no doubt about it, is the spirits gathered them at a place that is called in Hebrew Armageddon. And if you have a look at a map of Israel, you will see that there is indeed a place which has been called Megiddo, or Megiddo, Megiddon. It's been called that for like thousands of years. So it was definitely a place back when Jesus was about, and long before that as well. Now then, this is the final enchilada. This is the absolutely pinnacle of everything. So we've had everybody mount up to the Battle of Armageddon, and here we are. It's the seventh seal, the seventh trumpet blast, the seventh and final bowl of wrath to be poured out. It says that there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Then I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and the 7 trumpets were given to them. Another angel came and stood at the altar, and he held a gold bowl of burning incense. He was given a large amount of incense in order to offer it on behalf of the prayers of all the saints on the gold altar in front of the throne. The smoke of the incense offered for the prayers of the saints rose up before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the incense container and filled it with the fire from the altar. He threw it down on the earth, and there was thunder, voices, lightning, and a great earthquake. Now, this is the final blast of the trumpet. Do you think it is going to sound exactly or eerily similar to the 7th seal? You can bet it absolutely does. It says, the 7th seal, then God's temple in heaven was opened, and the chest containing his covenant appeared in his temple. There were lightning, voices, thunder, and an earthquake, and large hail. Lightning, voices, thunder, and an earthquake. Exactly the same as the 7th seal. Does the 7th bowl say exactly the same? You bet it does. Then the 7th angel poured his bowl into the air, and the loud voice came out from the temple, from the throne, saying, "It is done." There were lightning strikes, voices, and thunder, and a great earthquake. Okay, so there you have it. Now, I really hope that made some sort of sense to you. I know it makes a lot of sense to me, and if it does to you too, then that is fantastic. Please comment below, particularly if you have anything yourself to share, any revelations on Revelation. I'd love to hear, and maybe together we can try and piece this whole mishmash together of all these different ideas. I know in there I have come out with a lot of ideas, and I admit that I could well be wrong on some of them, and some of them literally I just came up with off the top of my head as I'm talking, so bear that in mind. Now, one really final and important point that I just want to make is I'm really not trying to dismiss anything that other people have said, particularly really cool guys that I like here on YouTube. So there's that dude from the Forerunner Chronicles, that guy from SDA Church, man, he is awesome, right? I love the videos he makes. He's got some really great stuff. Also, the dude that got imprisoned maybe like a year or so ago, that Jim Staley, he's done a lot of really great videos on like Christmas and Easter and that sort of thing. What a guy, got a really good message there to put out. And of course, we cannot forget the legend himself, Michael Rood. What a guy. So he's done amazing things, and clearly knows what he's talking about. So I'm not trying to sort of dismiss anything that anybody else has said, because obviously they're a bit more into this stuff than me. If you have a look at my other videos, this is the first time I've ever put any sort of religious sort of content out. Normally it's just me trying to lose a few pounds. Okay, so yeah, if you've got any comments, please feel free, comment. I'd really love to hear about it. And that's me for now. Okay, hope to hear from you soon.